All right, we're back, baby. This is the Patriots Interference Podcast, a proud member of the wacky, wide, and wonderful CLNS Media Network. Prize Picks is our proud partner as well. Coming back, it is Wednesday, July 8th. I am back in my office for a rare solo episode. No, this is not everyone's favorite version of the solo episode. Andrew drinks alone and talks to himself. This is Andrew sits alone and talks to himself because it is, again, Wednesday morning. And I honestly think, for at least a foreseeable future, the worst of Patriots football is behind us. So I do not any longer need a little grandpa's old cough medicine to get through our film sessions Monday in season. However, we'll put a pin in that for now. Here's the plan. Since I abandoned you with no notes, no signs, no heads up last week in our last episode with Mutt, which was a bit of a grab bag as well as some Patriot stuff. This will be our lone episode this week. It is all about you. I answered every single question I got on X and on Blue Sky. And Lord knows I hesitate every single time I put out a every question answered edition because the internet does not deserve your trust or mine. But I did it anyway. You guys delivered. We have awesome questions this week. So we will get to projections for the season. We'll get to Drake Maye. We'll get to surprise cuts from training camp. We'll get to guys to watch for if you, like me, will be down at training camp, which will start officially actually on your boy's birthday, Wednesday, July 23rd. Shout out also Nomar Garcia-Parra, birthday brother. But Mike Vrabel will speak the day before, and then we're off and running till the mid of, I think the middle of January. It's a little bit of a heads up about where I think the season is going to go. But the point is, today is about you, all your questions. That's this week's episode. Next week's episode is my favorite tradition on the podcast. In fact, a tradition no one else likes as much as me, and the numbers show it. But it is the Patriots Scrimmage Draft. And what helps offset the fact that no one else likes this bit as much as I do is the fact that we have on someone that everybody likes, and that is Fitzy, who has been allowed to come back on the show. Thank you, WEI. We are grateful to them. By the way, listen to Fitzy on the WEI afternoon show with Andy Hart and Ted Johnson, which, if we're being honest, seems like a crew put together by the best Pats interference guests. Alas, if the ratings are no good, don't blame me. But the Scrimmage Draft is really simple. It's a fun way to talk about the team. It explores not only each individual player, but as Fitzy and I will go through next week, which positions are shallow, which guys we think we might break out, because the premise is Mike Vrabel has let us run practice. And he says, you can do a scrimmage like me, you, and every friend you knew growing up did in the backyard at one point. Let's pick teams. He and I are captains, and we alternate picking players in the Patriots roster for a theoretical scrimmage. So we'll each have 22 players. Drake Maye is the automatic QB. No picking kickers, long snappers, punters. They're also going to play for both teams. But we'll get through about half the roster, commentary on guys, jokes along the way. So that will be next week, I think Monday or Tuesday. So look for this on the 14th or 15th. Very, very excited to see Fitzy's face once again. So come back next week. And then, like I said, the week of July 21st, which is the Monday, training camp eve. We will be back with a training camp preview either that day or maybe the next day, because then we can recap what Mike Vrabel said at his press conference, which again will be the day before training camp, Tuesday the 22nd, when veterans report. Is anyone, out of shape? Is anyone put on the PUP list? Whatever it might be. I don't know who will be on for that episode, but that is our plan for now. Lastly, before we get to your questions, subscribe to my YouTube channel @_Andrew Callahan. It's the same handle you'll find me on Instagram, though I don't post. We're going to try to change that this year. It is the same handle you'll find me on X, so long as Grok is not calling himself Mecha Hitler much longer. Real thing that happened yesterday, by the way. So if you are not watching on YouTube, leave a rating or review on Apple and Spotify. The people who have done this recently even had their reviews read aloud on this podcast, which weren't even 5 stars. And it's because I genuinely appreciate all of the feedback that we get, because it makes the show better. It helps expand our reach. And I got to tell you, we have some new plans that were partly inspired by you guys for this season's podcast, which I'm very excited to get to. But let's not wait any longer. Let's get to Jonathan, who's asking, is Terry McLaurin in play for the Patriots? So Terry McLaurin, the clearest example of a non-Patriot who should be a Patriot, 3rd-round pick, 2019, since goes off, has a great career with the Commanders. They're in a bit of a contract dispute down in Washington. To directly answer the question, no. He will get paid in Washington. He deserves it. The Commanders have a rookie quarterback who is their franchise quarterback and is going to be on a cost control contract for the foreseeable future. These are the players that you pay up until you have to extend Jaden Daniels down the road. Terry McLaurin's in his prime. He's a captain. He's everything you wanted to be, and everything some of us thought he would be coming out of Ohio State as a special teams impact player, captain, and a guy with an excellent three cone. Again, non-Patriot who should have been a Patriot, but we're moving on. I don't think he's in play. As far as when you hear it on the radio, TV, it's a summer. Like, guys have to fill airtime. But I'm telling you what I would tell you if this was on 98.5 or NBC, where you'll probably see me again soon enough. I just don't think it's going to happen. Washington made the NFC Championship game last year, partly thanks to Terry McLaurin. When you're on the precipice like that, you don't let those players get away, even if they want more money than you think they deserved. Neely asking, in your opinion, what's a return to dignity for the Patriots? Is it 7 wins? Playoff hunt, just being watchable? I love the last qualifier there. Like, just be watchable, because we know they haven't. Even when they last won 7 to 8 games in 2022 with Matt Patricia and company. My answer is 8-9 is dignity. You double your win total. This is real tangible progress in all the ways that really matter. And by the way, as much as they'll have a soft schedule coming up, and you're going to hear this a ton up until week 1, if you go 8-9, you'll have to have beaten some good teams along the way. It could be Buffalo, it could be Baltimore, it could be Pittsburgh or Las Vegas, depending on how those teams do, and they'll see them both within the first 3 weeks of the season. When you beat good teams, you earn respect. And that, more than anything, over the last 5 years has been the Patriots' problem. Can you punch up? Can you punch above your weight? And that's what Mike Vrabel, as we've documented here in the show, and I've written about it at the Herald, did more in Tennessee than every other head coach in the league as an underdog while he was there from 2018 to 2023. Meanwhile, you look at the Patriots for most of that same stretch, win the Super Bowl in 18, hot start in 19, fall apart, later losing the wild card, of course, due to Vrabel's Titans. Since then, here are their big wins. Okay, talking about punching above your weight. And forgive me if I miss one, but this is pretty much it. You beat the Ravens at home in 2020 in a home game that was on Sunday Night Football. You beat Vrabel's banged up Titans in 2021. You beat the Bills in a windstorm that same season. Nobody good in 2022. Nobody remotely good in 2023. The Bengals and last year's opener. And then that's it. That's all. Those are the real upsets. And the Bengals, by the way, who had a good, okay final record, right? Didn't make the playoffs. Or the worst week 1 team in modern league history. Like, you can look this up. Since Zach Taylor got there, when they were bad and when they were being good, they just sleepwalk through the first game of the season. So that's it. If the Patriots finish 8-9, they'll have as good of a win, if not better, on their schedule this season than they did in the last 5 years. That's part of the step in the return to, quote, dignity. One question from 2 people. This is Ed and Cheeseburger Posse. Another, in your opinion. This is all my opinion, by the way. This is my show. Like, we'll have a lot of facts and research and stats, but the stuff you're typically here for are the takes. So if you guys want to save some characters or time, let's just get to where the Pats finished the AFC East. I truly believe it'll be second. I say this as a Drake Maye believer. I say this as a Mike Vrabel believer. I was writing about why the Patriots should draft and then hire them well before they actually did. So this is not they show up and reporters want points with the new coach and the quarterback. You can go listen to those episodes and read those articles. They're there. Mike Vrabel's a legitimate good coach. Drake Maye is going to be a franchise quarterback. But the more popular this take gets about the Patriots going from 4th to 2nd, the wild card race, whatever it is, and PFF just listed their offensive line as the bottom 5 unit. And I think that's probably fair, and that's a problem. The more uneasy I feel, right? Because there's always, I don't know what the gambling adage is, you kind of fade the public. And if you were to make the case against the Patriots, you start there with the offensive line. Even if it's not bottom 5, it's in the bottom half. You look at the best teams in the league last year, all working with an above average offensive line. This is an offense, by the way, that also is built to play from ahead, to run the ball. Okay. If you fall behind and other teams want to double Stephon Diggs, okay, what's plan B? Like, you'll have an ability to maybe dink and dunk your way downfield, but that's not the league that we live in. Now, that said, I have no faith in Miami. That is going to blow up this year. Mike McDaniel might as well be on Indeed come January. Same with Chris Greer, whose firing is probably well overdue. 2 is too fragile. It's a bad defensive roster. They're even worse on offense. The Jets, believe it or not, I think are getting a little bit, and this is where I have to remind you, this is not Andrew drinks alone and talks to himself. I think they can make a run to 500. They have a good offensive line. Fields is not a good passer. But if he doesn't turn the ball over, that hands the keys to their defense, which I think will be much better under Aaron Glenn. They got a number one wide receiver. I can see it. So anyway, I do believe they can finish in second. But the more you hear this, the less I'm going to like it, because that means we're all glossing over the same problems. And those are the ones that typically crop up and make us all look foolish. Carlos, hey, Andrew, what would you consider a successful season for Drake Maye? Expectations seems to be all over the place at this moment. Yes, they do. And I would say even the idea of a year two leap being baked in is kind of the problem, right? Now, I expect this from Drake Maye. Everything around him is better. He's a natural player. He's a hard worker. He's smart. There's everything in there. All of the ingredients for a good quarterback in a great season. But just because you have the ingredients doesn't mean the timing and the amounts are there all put together for it to come out when you have a finished product. So I would just say my expectations for him are this. If we are going to compare him a year ago to Josh Allen and Justin Herbert when he was a prospect, and then he comes into this situation, I think those comps remain fair 14 months later. And specifically with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a rookie, was throwing darts into the third row at Gillette Stadium and the Bills' last game here in 2018, where he was just all over the place. Okay. He had to rein in the turnovers and boost his accuracy. Year two, he reined in the turnovers. Okay. He was still not willing to take the check down, which we still see with Drake Maye, who is going to wait and figure he has to create. And sometimes he's right, but that's a bad habit long-term to be in. I think he'll be able to rein in the turnovers this year. And I think, just as Josh Allen did in 2019, in year two, when he finished with 20 touchdowns, 9 picks, 3,100 yards, and a 59% completion percentage, that's fair. And you know what? We like Drake Maye a little bit better, don't we? Certainly as a prospect, I liked him better than Josh Allen. Josh Allen probably had a better situation. Still did not have Steph Diggs in his prime, though. In 17 games, here's your expectations. 22 to 24 touchdowns, 10 to 12 picks, 4 to 5 rushing touchdown, and a completion percentage at least north of 63%. We all know there are better stats out there. CPOE, okay, you can go EPA per play. You can go PFF grades if you want, any number of different directions. But for the sake of simplicity and the sake of sticking with our original projections for who this player was before he got to the Patriots and what we've seen since, I think the Josh Allen comp, even if he doesn't reach the upper echelon of what Josh Allen has done now as a literal MVP the entire league, year two, that's totally fine. Herbert, by the way, I said, by the way, 7 times here now. This is also going to go in my notes for this summer. We got to cut that down. Herbert was 38 touchdowns and 15 picks. That is far too many touchdowns to expect from a guy who is working with a bottom 10 to 12, 15 at best skill core around the league. Trent, is this offensive line good enough for the Patriots to be a wild card team? Yes, but all caps, bold, underlined. Health is going to be huge, and so is in-season development. Garrett Bradbury cannot get hurt. You've got Jared Wilson and then old friend Ben Brown, who my favorite fun fact from talking to Ben last year in the locker room is that this guy is a freshman who played varsity, a small, I don't know if it was a Catholic school, but it was a religious high school in Mississippi. Once went from the football field, started walking towards the locker room, and goes, oh, wait, I have a show to do at halftime, because Ben at the time was a band kid, and then marched around the field with the rest of the band, playing his trombone in full uniform. I don't think you want to see him do that as much as you don't want to see him play center again for the Patriots. I think he's a fine locker room guy and a backup. But the point is, even if you're not a big Garrett Bradbury person, you'd rather him be out there. Will Campbell also has to stay healthy, because then you're watching the Vidarian Lowe show again, and I know you don't want to do that. So those are the two big ones, and they have to bounce back, because Morgan Moses, right now is the rock, this 34-year-old right tackle. Mike Oweno, we know, has the talent. Who knows? Left guard is a question mark. There's enough here. You just need the same things that are always true for every team that surprises or makes a title run: good health and good luck, to be non-negotiable for this offensive line, which, zooming out, puts a lot on the strength and conditioning staff, right? Because it's much as it's really probably more important than preventative measures nowadays, as far as the sports science goes and the load management, as is how you can treat injuries after the fact, because everyone's going to have the same range of treatments and recovery methods. What are you doing in the front end? That separates some teams right now in the league, though injuries are also a big factor of luck. So that's going to put a lot of that staff, and Doug Marone, who's the one obviously in charge of the development, as well as Jason Hotailing. And the second assistant offensive line coach is going to bug me. He was here last year. Robert Kugler, bang, there we go. More than Trent asked for, but yes, just a big Couple of ifs. Speaking of offensive linemen, Caden Wallace, where does he fit? That's what KLB wants to know. He says, I feel like last year was a throwaway year and Wallace still has a lot of potential. Sure. Where does he fit? Swing tackle. I think he can play right tackle. We saw him do this at Penn State at a high level. He started there last year. But when you're a third-round pick in your second year playing for a new regime, that's not good enough anymore. The questions now become, are you versatile enough? Are you tough enough? Because we all have to find out. And sometimes players like him can be casualties of their circumstances, meaning that your development gets cast aside for the fact that, hey, we have no one else to play left tackle. Or let's say left guard, which is where we last saw Caden Wallace at the last minicamp practice. And so we're going to move you around, even if it's not in your best interest, because it's in the, quote, best interest of the team, end quote. I was already worried that was happening to him last year when he was splitting time between left and right tackle. But there's a balance here because he has to prove it in those reps. It's not that he gets one rep and if he blows it, he's cast aside. It's just, if you think he's a good enough right tackle, I'd rather hone that in. They want to test him at left, though, and that's where I think long-term he'll probably be. Pat's pro, and then we got, I think we're almost halfway through. Quote, good morning, Andrew. With camp only 2 weeks away, who is your surprise cut? Anthony Jennings. Jennings better suited for the old Belichick system. He did not run, and this is the most important part, with the ones or twos in the spring. Okay, he's a run-first player. I'm not guaranteeing this. Again, this is surprise cut. I think he's good enough to be in a roster for most teams. But right now, for who they want to be and how they want to play, he feels like he's on the outside looking in. You could also go receiver because the surprise cuts are often positions that have a lot of depth. You pick Booty or Bourne. I suspect they could probably dump one or the other in a late round pick swap trade. You know, Bourne in a 7th for a 6th or a 5th or something like that, right down the road. Jalen Hawkins, talk about positions that also are pretty stacked with just usable players, not pro bowlers, multi-year starters, but you got Duggar, you got Peppers, Craig Woodson's already in there. Marcus Epps, who they signed this offseason. Schooler's not going anywhere, and he's going to be a 5th safety, but whatever. Jalen Hawkins is a very crowded safeties room. I still think he's useful and not even just like, oh, you know, he's a core special teamer, which is like a legit point, but we just have to mix up the voices here every once in a while. And I'll leave you one more name who's not in the safeties room anymore. Marte Mapu, okay? Speaking of third-round picks, playing for a new coaching staff that didn't draft them, he doesn't have a whole lot of great tape so far in his career. Some of that's injuries, some of it's out of his hands, but he might not even qualify as a surprise guy. So those are the names I'll give you. Kyle, who are some of the players you look forward to seeing in actual pads when camp starts? Good question, and a great time to note the Patriots will not be in pads the first week of camp. So they will go Wednesday the 23rd, straight through Saturday the 26th, 4 straight days. They're going to be off on the 27th. If you want to come to camp, go the 29th, I think is the best day that you can guarantee a padded practice, Tuesday the 29th. To answer your question, a lot of rookies. Will Campbell, for sure. Kyle Williams, how is he cutting, moving, dealing with the physicality of the line of scrimmage? Does that carry over, as we often see from smaller receivers who are athletic in the spring, but don't dominate when the pads come on? This is the Trey Nixon Memorial Award. Trayvon Henderson, obviously, for similar reasons. Milton Williams, especially in one-on-one pass rush. This is a guy who, you know, we know got paid a ton of money, was excellent on a per-snap basis. That efficiency, though, typically wanes for most players as your volume goes up. As Milton Williams gets more on his plate, even though he won't see a ton of snaps in the preseason, or we certainly hope not, how does he look not only just in the one-on-one pass rush, but in late in periods when he's starting and getting all of those reps at defensive tackle? Because it could be him and Barmore. You could also throw in here, but basically rookies and the new guys. We'll do one more question, then we'll get to one more thing. Quig, where the salary cap is not an issue, what teams do you see cutting players that Vrabel and company could add to our roster as depth or starters? This is word for word. But I think the point is, like, are there surprise cuts around the league that you could see the Patriots pouncing on? And because the Patriots picked 4th in the draft just last April, they will have the 4th slot in the waiver order through week 3, meaning anyone who's basically a young player. I think it's 3 years of service or less. It might be 4, but off the top of my head, we'll conservatively go 3. If they're released across the league, they're put on waivers. So it'll go the Titans, Browns, Giants. I know the Browns traded that pick, but they're second still in the waiver order. Then the Patriots. If they get past those 3 teams, the Patriots can have dibs on anyone who gets cut. So who do they pick up? I will tell you after this message from Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Look, we all know the summer has been slow for sports, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun without the sun. Baseball's going on, all right? Even those of us who are a little upset at our favorite teams for trading Rafael Devers for a bag of balls and a couple of players who are hanging around in basically quad A, I can still have fun watching the Sox because of Prize Picks. This remains the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real cash. It's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app, and it's simpler than you could ever think. All you have to do is build a lineup of players. Every player at Prize Picks comes with a stat. It could be runs, it could be home runs, it could be RBIs, it could be hits, total bases. When we get to football season, it could be yards, it could be touchdowns, it could be completions, it could be anything. All right. You look, you find your player, you find the stat that you like, and you go more or you go less. You find another player with another stat. You go more or you go less. You add them to your lineup. Boom, that's it. All you have to do is pick 2 to 6 players. And here's the kicker. Sometimes those numbers, you can fudge them a little bit. You can go lower or higher with the number they give you so it's flexible, and then you pick more or less on your different number. But you can only do this at Prize Picks, where you can use Venmo. This is my favorite. Apple Pay, MasterCard. Quick and easy deposits to get into your account for sports season. The app is super easy to use. You can win up to, and I kid you not, 2,000 times your money. Combine your sports, players, stats, whatever you want. Just 2 to 6 players. That's it. And if you sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5 with your first lineup. You don't need to win. Just play your lineup. 2 to 6 players, $5. Boom, $50, 50 right in your account. So sign up today. Download the app. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, so to answer Quig's question, I don't see any, to be honest. Patriots are 4th in the waiver order. But look, the Titans, Browns, and Giants are going to be banking on waivers, as the Patriots did last year, to bolster their depth. And even when the Patriots were picking 3rd and the teams ahead of them, Carolina grabbed a couple of players. They're not real impact players. This was not the big benefit that Gerard Mayo, believe it or not, said something in public that proved to be wrong, praised it to be, made it out to be last season. So when you talk about starters, forget it. Now you go, okay, well, what about veterans that are overpaid or might not fit with other teams? Sure, they'll come available, but those players are then either going to be paid elsewhere or playing for a contender. The Patriots can only offer payment. And at this point, that might be enough for players that Vrabel has coached before, like Harold Landry signing almost immediately and not even, he hit free agency, but not waiting much longer to sign. The issue is, while the Patriots do have cap space this year, they're well over the cap next offseason. Of course, it's fungible, okay, and very fixable. But the fact that they are over the cap next year indicates to me they plan to roll over most of their cap space this season to do exactly that, fix next season's issues, when a lot of the free agent contracts they just signed, the near $300 million in guarantees, really kick in year 2, okay? It's a low base salary in year 1 with a big signing bonus. You get high guaranteed salaries in year 2, Carlton Davis, Milton Williams, all the way down. That's when the pain comes. That's what they're preparing for. Plus, I'll leave you with this. Probably more important than the salary cap stuff. The roster has already been turned over by 46% or so. Okay. Anyone they didn't want, they've dumped. And the guys they brought in here are here for a reason. And some of them might be younger players to test out and run. But I don't see many veterans fitting what the Patriots want and wanting the Patriots in return. So I like it. It's not possible, but I put it very, very unlikely. 4 more. Chris, in 2026, Big Mike, meaning Michael Money, was due, speaking of cash and cap, $17.5 million in cash. Is this season his last year as a Patriot? If he doesn't return to form, yeah. There's a great guard in there somewhere. We've seen him for stretches. Everyone gets a free pass from last year, but there are no sacred cows here for 2026. Maybe Maye, Will Campbell, Milton Williams, Trayvon Henderson, Robert Spillane, probably Harold Landry, a few others, and that's it. Mike Wenu is not a part of that group. You got to talk about guarantees. As soon as those dry up, so does your job security. And if they need space, he might be a sacrificial lamb, but they better have a plan B. This cannot be savings for the sake of the Kraft's pocketbook, which I don't think is how they're operating now, not just because of the free agent spending, but how they're spending in other things, which all along has been the best way to measure whether owners are cheap or not. Stuff like the planes, not great. As well as the analytics staff that they're building out, more money for coaches who had to transplant and move, which, as I reported last year, guys who came to New England were shocked at how little money and time they got to move their families as coaches. That's all been fixed because Vrabel said, look, you got to spend more, and they are. So anyway, I do think it is. I do think, though, he will return to some version of that old form, and you just don't let that guy go. Corey, let's say the Patriots had signed Mike Evans and Ronnie Stanley in free agency. What would they have done differently in the first 3 rounds of the draft? I like this question. So they're at number 4. I still think Will Campbell is an option at number 4 because Morgan Moses is 34. Ronnie Stanley's on the wrong side of 30. He probably would have gotten a 2-3-year deal, high in guarantees early, and then let him walk again. But let's say it's not Will Campbell. It could have been Armand Membu, who could have replaced Morgan Moses in 26 and been your swing tackle in the interim. It could have been Mason Graham, who went 5th to the Browns and would have fit nicely with a defensive line that's going to rely a lot on rotation and going to really power the pass rush. When you look at the blitz numbers for the Titans under Vrabel, one of the least blitz-happy teams in the entire league. And then Javon Walker's the only other player that I would think. He slipped a lot further in the draft than people expected, but I mean, I'm on record. I did a whole podcast with Mark Daniels right before the draft saying, okay, if it's not Will Campbell, what are they going to do? He was both the top of our list then. So I think it probably would have been those 3. As far as the other drafts, they're definitely getting an offensive lineman still on, again, for the future. And this is where, even after taking Will Campbell, I forget the lineman's name, but they were debating between Trayvon Henderson and an offensive lineman the Dolphins drafted right before them, actually traded up to go get from Arizona. So they're looking there long-term for depth, and they definitely would have gotten a wide receiver. So Kyle Williams is still probably factoring in. But the top pick probably changes. Han, what are the odds? First of all, the irony in a guy named Han asking for what are the odds. Never tell me the odds. It's making me smile. Second of all, the end of his question is this. What are the odds of starting left guard is not currently on the team? 6.9%. None of their options are good. Right? Cole Strange has shown to be average at best, I think, in stretches. The athleticism is there. And the unfortunate part was before he got hurt, was playing his best football, but it still wasn't saying a whole lot. He's still here. Layden Robinson is here. City So, who everyone forgets about, is also around. If they feel good enough about those 4 other spots, they'll be willing to swallow issues at left guard, which you can help out a little bit better, especially with a veteran center next to him and Garrett Bradbury. I don't think this is an issue where all 3 of them are bomb. Probably one of those gets cut. The other 2 are here, and they'll ride into the season with those 2 guys at left guard. Lawrence, where do you think Jalen Polk will line up this year? He played mostly slot and at the Z at Washington in college, and he doesn't have the speed to be an X. I'd say probably those same spots, right? Last year he did the same. It's the slot and Z. He's not a big separator, which is the top skill you want as the X. For those unfamiliar, the X receiver is just the one on the weak side of the formation, meaning, often away from the tight end, not always. And you put 2 receivers to the other side, or, sometimes it's just boundary field in terms of spacing. But the bottom line is you have to win on your own. Okay. You don't get a whole lot of help from route concepts. You got to beat coverage in isolation. And if you're not a big separator, like you have other X's who are, your DeAndre Hopkins at his prime, outstanding body control, even better hands. You just haven't seen that from Polk, who had one of the more disastrous rookie seasons for a first, second, or third round pick among any receiver in recent history. I still think he can bounce back. To what level, I don't know. But if he is going to thrive, it's not going to be where Stephon Diggs is probably lining up for most of the year. And to be clear, these receivers shouldn't be pigeonholed into those positions because you'll remember Josh McDaniels moves these guys around all the time. Now, when the chips are down, you're in 2-minute drill, they're not going to waste time with guys being at their less than optimal positions. And for Polk, that means staying sometimes in the slot, but probably not with Pop Douglas. And even Stephon Diggs probably gets in the slot. He'll be more at the Z, and then the secondary spot will be in the slot. Last one, Kurt. Hey, Andrew, my 4th of July was nice. Good. The hot dogs and hamburgers were not served. Not good. Can I ever forgive my grandma for this clear form of malpractice? No. I think you need to drop grandma off at Goodwill. I think you need to part ways, say thank you for your time, and explain to her exactly where she came up short. Hamburger and hot dogs. We actually did this on 98.5 with Joe Murray. Awesome show, I thought, on the 3rd, especially for a guy I'd never been in the same room with in 7 years of being in the market covering the Patriots. Those were our top 2 picks in a draft of 4th of July foods, cookout foods, followed by like chicken, sausage in there, sausage and peppers. But you got to have burgers and dogs. And this is a vegan family, okay, where you're the Purdue family, where chicken, I assume, is just like baked into your whole family experience everywhere you turn and every gathering that you have. fine. But no, you got to have burgers and doves. All right, that is it for this week. We'll be back next week with Fitzy. I'm just going to guarantee you it's going to be a great episode. We're actually about to do it now and then save it for you next week. Training camp, we're going to have smaller videos. We're going to have more content. And again, we're still finalizing the schedule. The week of camp practice starts on the 23rd. Vrabel will talk on Tuesday the 22nd. And I'll be back sometime around that for a training camp preview with a guest. And then going twice a week again in August. Anyway, great to be back. We will see you next week.